Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2019 and the fourth part of this experiment where we're taking a look what would happen if a non-league team had £1 billion. Now obviously we have given them around £900 million already by this point, but we did also give them a sugar daddy owner, which means that they've had more money keep being pumped into the club, and I think that's a better way for the game to handle this situation rather than me just topping up their cash over and over again. And as you can see, so far from when we kicked off, they have been promoted all the way up into the Championship. They've actually been in there a couple of times now because they did get relegated in 22nd place, then bounced straight back up with a second place finish. And at the moment, if we take a look at the Championship League table, then we can see that they did manage to finish in 19th place, which means they have not been relegated and will be able to build on where they are. Now today we're going to go forward 10 whole years into the future. We'll do it in two 5-year chunks, having a look at where they've done in the midpoint and then at the end. But if you are enjoying this series and you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. There'll be at least one more part to this series. Drop a like if you are enjoying it though, and I'll make sure I get that next part out as quickly as possible. But let's just go straight 5 years into the future and see how they've done. Well, we are now 5 years into the future. The year is 2036, so this has been ticking on for quite some time, and this is their third season in the Championship, but the second one in a row after they were relegated. And you can see they kicked off with 2 straight defeats after a poor pre-season as well. They did manage to beat Aston Villa 2-1, which was a good win. Knocked out the Carabao Cup very early on, but 3 straight league wins, including over Derby and then Leicester, set them up quite well for a good losing run, really. They lost to Exeter, drew with Burnley, and then 5 defeats across 6 matches will not have helped them. They did get a little recovery in form, though. Very consistent with wins and losses. It's not many draws appearing in here, but they did get 3 straight wins here and then a little bit more patchy before going on an unbeaten run. Quite a few draws here. That's an 8-game unbeaten run with victories either side of the losses as well. So a good position there, finishing up the season in a not too strong place. If we go all the way forward to the Championship and just have a look at this league table, then you can see that in the 31-32 season they actually finished all the way up in 13th place, which is a bit of an improvement over where they were before. They're not looking like a relegation team, and part of that will be due to the amount of money they spent. It went from 7.75 million to 46 million pounds, 22 million spent on Dennis Robinson, and we can actually just draw up his little stats here. He does still play for Chelmesford. He's on 82 grand a week at the moment, which seems a little bit high. Worth about 11 million. They also signed Jamie Collier for about 7 million pounds. You can see his details here as well. He looks alright. He's on 120 grand a week, which again seems a little bit high. And then Russell Keane, the next player, on 58 grand a week. Their wage bill is out of control, which it has been for a little while. The following season they did do an awful lot better. As you can see, pre-season got off to a much better start, doing well in the Championship as well. 2 draws and then a winning streak before losing to Preston. They did beat Luton 3-1 in the Carabao Cup, and then Oldham in the second round as well. Bit of a cup run. They also beat Barnsley 1-0 in the third round to get into the fourth round, but a really poor run of form here when they did eventually go out on penalties to Bradford of all teams. They should have been beating Bradford really and making it into the next round, but really poor form generally at this point did hold them back quite a lot before their victory over Wigan kicked off a really good run of form. 2-0 in that game, but then against Exeter they did get through in the FA Cup. They also beat QPR 2-1 as well to get into the 5th round. Another little cup run going, but then they were knocked out by Premier League Watford 2-1. Their Championship form still going pretty consistent, but it was not enough for the playoffs. If we go all the way forward and look at the next year, you can see they did finish again around 12th place, 64 points. They're getting consistent mid-table now in the Championship. In terms of money spent, they went from 46 million to just 34 million. The amount of money not rising, which is a bit surprising. They did sign Reece Rogers for 9.25 million. He seems to have moved on to Bolton. Signed for 14 million, sorry, moved on to Bolton since then. They also had Tom Fisher, who's now free. No, he's not a free agent. Where's he? He's at Legia Warsaw now, having left Chelmsford after just 1 season. Paul Stokes now at QPR, 6 million, 26 grand a week. He's on at QPR. And Lucas Stearns as well. He's still at Chelmsford on 27 grand a week. So you can see there, they are kind of getting a little bit better, or at least a bit more consistent. But in the following season, yet again, a good pre-season, a lot of Scottish teams, a little Scottish tour there. But their season, very inconsistent, a lot of defeats. And this run here, from here all the way down to the bottom of the page, essentially, I mean, we need to go right the way down. There are very few wins here. This is 3 wins from September to the new year. That is horrific, and that is relegation form, if anything. But they did seem to turn it around in January. Maybe they brought in a new manager or signed some new players. They were knocked out of the FA Cup, though, in the 3rd round. Still quite poor form, to be honest. And they may well have been relegated out of that. I'm not even sure. If we go forward and look at the next season, you can see they avoid relegation by 4 points. They've dropped about 16 points from where they were the year before, dropped a lot of league positions as well, and they've only just managed to stay up there. They're not moving in the right direction anymore. They did spend only £10 million, which I'm struggling to understand why they're spending so little, unless the Championship financial fair play rules are really restricting them, which is possible. But they seem to be struggling to get out of the Championship at the moment. The following year, again, really inconsistent, really poor. You keep expecting them to just start having loads of green on the page, but it's not helping, not happening. The whole way through this season, they are really struggling, including knocked out the FA Cup by Watford for the 2nd time in 3 years. But overall, across the Championship, they are just not getting the results. And this year, again, it led to a... where are they this time? A 14th place finish, a little bit better. They're not actually doing that much better points-wise, but the league's a little bit tighter at the bottom end this year. So they have managed to finish up in 14th place, which is an improvement. They spent, if we can have a look, they did spend 25 million. The spending did go up, so they're up to 10 million on Ian Kamara. He's valued at 1.7 million now. He's not on a high wage, which is quite interesting. Kyle Curtis, another big signing, 34 grand a week. He's now on. Miles Sill, who's on 32 grand a week at this point. But if we go forward to the most recent season, again, it's just, what is going on here? Why aren't they spending money, and why are they doing so poorly? They did have a good cup run in the FA Cup, though, after this horrific run of form, where they only got 1 win from the 18th of September until the 29th of December. They are not having a good period of time in the winter months, or in the autumn months leading to the winter. But their FA Cup run was ended by West Ham 3-0. A load of defeats around this, including at the end of the season. I can't believe they've got enough wins here to stay in the league. But if we go to the most recent season, you can see they've avoided relegation by 2 points. 36 points, I'm pretty sure, would have got them relegated pretty much every year. They would have finished bottom almost every single other Championship year. They would have finished relegated. There is no doubt that every single other year they would have been relegated. But this year they survived just because the other teams were so much worse. They're 10 points off 20th. They've absolutely nosedived, and I do not understand why. If we have a look at the amount of money spent, 22 million, again, not a lot of money. 10 million on Brian Henry. He is now valued at 2.8 million, so they've lost a lot on him. Gamble has doubled in value, actually, so they've made money on him. He was worth the gamble. They've got John Parr on loan and Robert Farmer as well. I mean, it's just really, really poor. And if we have a look at their overall form, you can see they're kind of just, they went up a bit, they came down, they're going up again, but they've come down to 21st now, and they just don't seem to be able to progress at all. If we look at their club details, reputation has gone up, club attendance has gone up, finances are still alright. I keep changing their sugar daddy to a front end because the game keeps making them an underwriter and then removing them completely with a club takeover. It does not like them having a front end sugar daddy. It really doesn't like it. But if we look at their landmarks, you can see that in action, because we kicked this episode off in 2031 where the stadium capacity was increased to 11. They did increase it to 14, but you can see scales down funding, withdraws funding, and every time I put it back up you get scales down funding. They just keep on doing that. But they have improved their youth and training facilities. They're a Cat 1 youth side now, which is very helpful, because if we look at their facilities, you can see they've got state-of-the-art training facilities, average corporate, superb youth facilities, and a youth level of 1. That will pay dividends in the long run. It's just going to take them a little bit of time to get there. They are turning over managers quite quickly, as you would expect. Paul Lambert did manage 3 years in the job, but sacked in 2033. when they stopped making progress, and then they've pretty much chopped someone every single year. They've got Lucas Hradecki at the moment, who is a goalkeeper, a pretty good goalkeeper in the game when you start this save. So we've already got current players becoming managers. But even their stadium sponsorship deal's gone down, I think. So, I mean, I don't really understand exactly what is going on with the team. If we look at their squad value and sort them actually by value, you can see 11.25 million. It's just not a good side. They are signing bad players, and they're giving them a huge wage as well. 120 grand a week for an 850k player who's 32 years old. He's been at the club 5 years, so it must be that he's got a 25% pay rise or something like that every year. If we look at their staff, I know some people wanted to look at this. Feel free to pause the screen at any point if you do want to look at this in more detail. Chief Scout Greg Strong is not great, 12 and 10 player ability and potential. Ronnie Murray as well, 8 and 5. They are not signing good staff, which is surprising because the amount of money they've got in the club, you would think they'd have more room to sign more staff, but that isn't what's happened so far. Now let's go forward 5 more years. I'm going to put the owner back up to a front end sugar daddy and see if he can keep pumping that money into the club, and let's see if they can finally get into the Premier League. Well, here's where we left off last time with their fixture list. You can see again they started off really poorly, knocked out of the Carabao Cup by Aston Villa. Terrible league form again through these autumn months all the way into December. Well, they did start to pick up around the Christmas period, bit of festive fun there. They beat Millwall in the FA Cup 3rd round, Burnley in the FA Cup 4th round, but were beaten by Everton on the 5th round, just missing out on the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. But their league form nosedived off a cliff, and that does not look encouraging. It looks similar to the previous year. And if we do go forward to the Championship table, you can see they were relegated. They got 8 more points this year, but they were 1 point off staying up. And if we go back to the fixture list and look at the end of that season, they did lose their final game of the season. Had they beaten Blackburn at home after their win against Brentford, they would have stayed up, but they couldn't do enough. And you can see they only spent £12 million. They had 14 million come in, which is a pretty recurring theme actually. I forgot to look at the right hand side when I was doing this before, but their net spend is really bad and has not really improved over the last few years. So they did actually get relegated from the Championship. They were down in League One. You can see that actually they did alright in League One, getting quite a lot of wins on the board. Into the Checkatrade Trophy 2nd round, but beaten by Arsenal's under-23s. Keep going in the FA Cup though, with progression against Luton and then losing to Blackburn in the 4th round, but unbeaten for a really long time in the league. And if we go all the way forward to the league table and drop down to League One, just dropping back a few seasons, you can see they did win the title by 2 points over Preston, getting straight back up into the Championship. But bear in mind that we thought they'd be getting into the Premier League. They're currently down in the Championship, or just had to come out of League One again, which is just ridiculous. In terms of transfers that season, they did go out and spend £27.5 million, which would probably get you out of League One no matter what team you were, I would imagine. They signed this guy for £11 million while they were down there on 79 grand a week. Thomas Keane, again, almost £10 million. He's on 150 grand a week as a 30-year-old left winger. But after being down in League One, they came back at the Championship and did a lot better this time. Knocked out by Liverpool in the Carabao Cup 4-0, but they're winning so many more games after going down to League One. Knocked out by Bolton in the FA Cup 4th round, but their league form was really strong. And if we go forward and have a look at the Championship for this season here, you can see they actually finished all the way up in 8th place. They were just outside of the playoffs. They were 11 points outside the playoffs, but position-wise, not far away from it. So they were doing an awful lot better. Bearing in mind they spent 27 million when they were in League One. They went out and spent just 14 million the next season. So that was just 5 million on Luke Sharman, who is now on 13 grand a week. Armando Lunchford, who's on 130 grand a week. Why are they paying this much? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But then the following season, it got off to a much better start 3 straight league wins and then a win in the Carabao Cup, out by Everton in the 3rd round, but their league form holding up through the months where they normally struggle. No doubt that they survived relegation this year, out of the FA Cup in the 3rd round, but what a run of victories this was. Doing absolutely fantastic, by far their best season in the Championship. And if we look at the table, they did win the league. They went out with 96 points, beating Newcastle to the title by just 1 point. Their biggest piece of silverware by far up to this point, and they went from 14 million. They only spent 15 million. They didn't spend almost any money whatsoever. Just about 10 million on Jeff Wiseman, but going up to the Premier League will mean they can go out and spend a huge amount of money next season. So if we go and have a look at their first season and their most recent season in the Premier League, it does not look good. They only had 4 friendlies for reasons that I don't understand. And then they started off with City, Chelsea and Arsenal and got 1 point out of that. A victory at the Etihad on your opening Premier League game is pretty decent. It's a shame that they went on an 8-game losing streak, actually not winning until the 8th of December, 2-1 against Brighton. It's not good reading. They then lost a whole bunch of other games. They only won 3 league games all season, which is embarrassing. And if we just go and look at that Premier League table, then you can see they finished bottom with 18 points and a minus 53 goal difference. Way worse than Newcastle and much worse than Bolton as well. Watford, I mean, 32 points is a pretty low total to stay up in the Premier League, but Chelmesford still finished 14 points under that. So that's not a good sign at all. They did go out and spend £125 million to get those 18 points, which, you know, is a lot of money, an awful lot of money. It's about £8 million per point, which is not ideal. £27 million spent on Mark Marsh, who's on 78 grand a week, he's still in the club. Oleg Sokolov is on 105 grand a week. Jordan Craig sitting there on 53 grand a week, he's left the club now. Jim Wallace on 105 grand a week. Their wage bill is enormous, 150 grand a week for Chris Reed as well. And you can see that despite winning the Championship there with 2 promotions in 3 years, they have now been relegated again and are going to have to come up once more. Now, if we have a look at their general information, just in case you are interested in that stuff, their facilities as well, they are looking to expand their stadium again, another 3,000 seats, which take them up to about 17,000, which I think is the most they can go. They've still got below average data analysis facilities. I'm not sure why that's the case, but their stadium sponsorship deal is worth quite a bit more. If we look at their finances, you can see reputation up at 6,000 now. That's gone up a lot. Club attendance huge, but they just can't fit. They just don't have a stadium big enough, so they're selling out every week. They need to build a new stadium. Again, their sugar daddy has dropped down. I have not given them more money. That's just the amount of money that the owner has put into the club, which is saving me for having to give them more money, actually. Facilities wise, you can see their maximum capacity actually isn't expansion capacity 17,000. That's the most they can go to. They will have to move to a new stadium eventually, but their facilities are looking pretty decent. If we look at their landmarks over time, you can see again it scales down funding. No matter what I do, the funding goes down. This guy scaled down funding, withdraws funding. I've had to keep putting it up every 2 or 3 years, which is a bit frustrating. But not a lot of information there really. Manager wise, have they held on to anybody? They did have Koke in charge for a little while, but they've not really held on to anyone except for Lyle Taylor, who got 2 years and 24 days. Joe McNerney got a little bit of time, but most of them are just being turned over very, very quickly. They did have Nathan Arke as well for nearly a year. But overall, they are not doing too well. If we look at their senior squad as it stands at the moment, valuation-wise, they do have £25 million players in there. Mark Marsh is in there. They've got a decent... For the Championship, I'm pretty sure they'll walk the Championship next season. If they hang on to these players, they will do well. Their trouble is their wage budget, which in the Championship, this is going to breach fair play. I have absolutely no doubt about that. They've got 6 players earning over 100 grand a week, and then another 3 just under that as well. That is enormous. That's nearly 8 million a week. No, not 8 million a week. 800,000 a week that they're spending on player wages for less than a full first team. It's just ridiculous the amount of money that they're spending on wages, which is where all their money is going, and probably why their owners are scaling down funding, because it's just a leaking bucket at the moment. But really, I think that's probably where we're going to have to leave it today, because they've just not really progressed. They're still in the Championship, which is where we started this, way back here. They have gone down a league, they've gone up a league, or they've gone up 2 leagues from where they were down, but I mean, they're still back in the Championship, and it's really frustrating because they've spent so much money not on transfers. I think the trouble is that the Championship's rule structures make it quite difficult to go out and just spend a load of money. I'm not sure what the information is, the rules here, if they've got fair play rules here. Teams must avoid making a loss of more than 15 million. They're going to avoid a transfer embargo. They have to avoid a transfer embargo. And they're only allowed to invest a maximum of 24 million towards the calculated income. This is where the issue is. That's not a lot of headroom. £15 million loss means plus the 24 that in your first season in the Championship you can spend 39 million over and above what your club generates, which if you've got a tiny stadium is not going to be a lot of money. But then they're not allowed to go over the £50 million loss. So for the next 2 years they can only spend a max of 24 million on top of what they bring in. Which is why they can't just go out in the Championship and spend 150 million like they can in the Premier League. So really, they need to get in the Premier League and survive, and then we can see them go on and start to do really, really well. Because otherwise, they're going to start to get this 12-point. That's administration, but they will start to get fined and have all kinds of points deductions for breaching fair play. So there are a lot of reasons why this is happening. It's quite frustrating that it's slow in progress. But I will do at least one more part. If you do want to see one more part, do drop a like on the video. Let me know in the comments if there's things you'd like to see. And make sure you are subscribed so you see the next part when it comes out. Probably tomorrow or maybe the day after, depending how busy I am at work. But until next time, see ya!